history, I am going to go off script here to say that I was the triathlon team advisor back in, the 90s, I think. And I don't think that they have made nationals since then. So I don't think that's not that recent history. Having not qualified for states just 4 years prior, this is obviously a really big deal. They competed in Frisco, Texas in April with a total of around 600 students between 4 divisions. The Westwood team competed against 350 students in their division alone, and they brought home 5 medals overall. So it was just an incredible season. I'm sure relying on the contributions of every member of the team. We are really, really proud of them. And can't wait to see what next year will bring. But let's take a moment to enjoy this year first, right? So I know that their advisor, Ms. White, is here, and also Ms. Parker is here, who I understand chaperoned the trip as well. So thank you to you as well for accompanying the team. And we'd love for the members of the team to come on up. We have some certificates for you, and then we'd love to take a picture. Wow.
Congratulations.
Brandon Hahn.
Congratulations.
Jessica Wong.
Congratulations.
Avin Mai. Ali Tarek.
Congratulations.
Aaron Wakto.
Congratulations.
Wakto, sorry, mispronounced. And Blake Kuntu.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Excellent. Actually, come on out here. We're going to get a picture. We're all ready.
Photo background.
I know.
As well. How I ended up in the middle, like I diagonal myself.
I think this is it. No.
He's trying to look for a play. Wait a minute.
1, 2, 3, and do this one too. Congratulations.
In all seriousness, I remember from my advising days that it depends both on preparing a whole lot of material and just relying on one's general knowledge base. So this is very impressive. All right, and next we have with us the Westwood High School robotics team. So the robotics team season begins each year in January with the release of the competition details, kind of what the challenge is. And then they have about 10 weeks to design and build the robot, to write and test the code that runs it, and to practice operating the robot. They had 2 regular season competitions, the weekends of March 25th and April 1st. And at their first event, junior Sean Tao was named a Dean's List semifinalist for his outstanding leadership, passion, outreach, and overall contributions to the team. Congratulations to Sean. The team's second event on April 1st was at WPI, and I heard about this almost in real time from Ms. Davenport, who was very excited how things are going. They competed against 40 other teams from around New England. The team won this event, which was their first competition win in the team's history. They were also awarded the Engineering Inspiration Award at this event for their community outreach efforts and effectiveness in recruiting students to engineering. They then advanced to compete in the New England District Championship in Springfield, April 6th to 8th, which they also won, giving them their second ever competition win. The successful season qualified them to compete in the first Robotics World Championship in Houston over April vacation. Students and parent volunteers flew or drove down to Houston during April vacation to compete, and they ended up placing 32nd in their division at the World Championships. Very exciting. And I don't think you've been to the World Championships before, have you? No, so this is Very, very exciting. So I want to thank their advisors, Jim Looney, who I know is with us somewhere here. Where did I say? Oh, there you are. And Raul Madera, who I suspect is at track right now. Thank them. And then also to thank, they have mentors from the community who provide a lot of technical expertise and guidance for this process. So Dwight Meglin is with us here tonight, and Steve Harrington. And Chris Aloisio, I believe, is also involved, but he was unable to be here. So thank you very much for the time that you dedicate to this. And congratulations to our students. This is really, oh, and we have the robot. That's the other thing we have here. Does the robot have a name? I know it has a number, 1757.
The robot's name is Luxo, which is the name of the Pixar lamp.
Oh.
It does look like the lamp.
Yeah, oh, that's great. That's exciting. Okay, well, we have some certificates also for robotics. I'm just going to get out of the way. Okay, so Charlie Marsland. Great. Next. Sean Tao. Jacob Kaplan. Elizabeth Lowney. Kevin Bai. Henry Marsland. Stand by. Luke Maxwell. Landon Bear. Biley Chang. Vinny Milizano. Rachel Pugh. Claire Pang. And Ivan Kai. And I got a note that 3 people weren't here, but Nina Pappas, Anthony Yang, and David Confoy. Did we get everybody? Yeah? All right. So we will get those maybe.
We can give them. All right, one of those.
You'll give them out. All right, very good. All right, you are lined up very nicely, so maybe we can just go with this. I'll run to the other end. I don't know if it's, are we gonna have to scrunch in?
We gotta get the
I gotta get the robot.
Yeah, let's scoot in.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to. Got it? All right, I'm standing up.
Drive the robot over. It's on wheels. Move the cart. We can try it.
That's a good question.
All right, maybe like there.
Yeah.
All right, and then.
Oh my gosh, it's like driving a wedding.
That's true. Okay. All right, and then. Move this way towards me.
I don't think we're getting it down here.
All right, great. Congratulations.
Every single photo taken.
And I already told students and advisors that you're welcome to make your departure at this point if you have other things to do. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
All right. Now how we're doing on tech. It's going on tech. Okay. Well. Oh, okay.
School?
Oh,
Jinx.
Oh, wow.
What's old school?
Vector.
Oh.
Projection of any kind right now. So our option, if it's possible, we'd like a 5.
Or we could do public participation should we move to something else while
Yeah.
we wait
Yeah,
for the
why don't we,
technology?
yeah.
Okay.
So apologies, we're having some technology issues, but why don't we move to public participation? given that we don't need any audiovisual for that other than this. So just a reminder, public participation is an opportunity for members of the community to come forward. Each member, by policy, each member has up to 3 minutes to participate. We'd appreciate it if you address the chair and say your name and address. And we, as by policy, we take it in, we take the input, but we don't respond to any public participation in that meeting. So with that, I would see if any member of the public would like to come forward and participate. Yes, please do. Come down. If you could come down, yeah.
Hi, Tara Themistocles.
You can sit there if you want. Go ahead, Tara. You don't have to, but you can. I think the microphones are better.
294 Clockwork Tree Street. School committee members, I'm hoping as a community we can figure out how to not repeat the last 2 elections. As you may know, my husband ran for the last school committee. I'm shocked at what happened in the last days before the election. Tom was hoping to bring people together. There seems to be a group in Westwood who continue to create a divide. Tom may not have been the perfect candidate for everyone. He was volunteering his time for the committee and willingness to learn. With taxes skyrocketing, he was hoping his financial background could be useful, but instead he was criticized for not being qualified or good enough. To my knowledge, there is no resume or qualification for running for school committee. Tom has never hurt anyone in this town. People dug through his Twitter, an adult platform, and put their own spin and opinion on his likes and posts. Seems as though some people in this town want to make running for a school committee as painful as possible if they believe anyone's views are different. My family, just like many other families in Westwood, has struggles. Nothing is perfect in life. It is a choice to look for the good and not the bad. Tom has no place for hate. He is not anti-anything or transphobic. Before you post your opinions, you should get to know him. It is disappointing whoever created the PDF days before the election. They took the time to chronicle and make fun of Tom's campaign at every step of the way. They attacked his credibility based on their own opinion and not facts. The PDF is toxic, hateful, slanderous. 7 pages passed around to hurt him. The creators did not even have the courage to sign their names. It is simple. If you disagree with the candidate's viewpoint, you have a choice not to vote for them. There seems to be no consequence for any of these actions, no apologies given. Tom and I have 4 kids. These attacks hurt my family in this town. It should be the committee's responsibility, as well as the school committee's responsibility, to lead by example and stand up for others. I hope you all will listen to all of us, because this is really important. And it doesn't just hurt my kids, it hurts all of your kids.
Thank you, Tara. Anyone else want to come forward? Yes.
Heather Morrison, 74 Million Drive. It has taken me a year and another election to come to you today to speak about the deplorable behavior that occurred during my run for school committee and continued in this election. I feel compelled to speak out because what has happened to me is not an isolated incident and cannot continue. During my run, I was called a racist, a homophobe, a neo-Nazi, white supremacist, despite the fact that I never made or posted a racist or homophobic statement. I never acted in a racist or homophobic way. These lies were spread because I chose not to sign the Inclusive Westwood Statement and because I agreed to speak to any member of our community who requested to, even those who Inclusive Westwood felt should not be spoken to. These actions are not racist or homophobic, yet many people made it their mission to keep me off the school committee by spreading these lies. My family and I were not the only people who were hurt by these lies. People shared these lies and hatred of me with their children, who then carried it onto our school buses, calling their peers homophobes if my sign was in their yard, or asking their peers why they had a racist sign in their yard. I stand by my actions last year. I spoke to any community member to listen that wanted me to listen. I declined the opportunity to sign the Inclusive Westwood Statement because I felt I should should not be a candidate for one group, but instead for the entire community. I hope that what happened to me was an outlier, and I thought Westwood would be different. I thought Westwood could do better than other towns. But I was again disappointed this election at adults spending their time disparaging candidates, as Tara has just outlined. I am equally disappointed in the behavior of the members of the current school committee. The ethics code of the school committee states that members must represent the entire community at all times. This code represents what inclusion is about. Unfortunately, I am concerned that in an effort to support DEI, the Westwood School Committee is becoming a more homogenous group that does not welcome beliefs different from their own. The current committee members select their candidates and then team up and actively and publicly campaign for and with them, while they remain silent, even when you witness these awful behaviors. You have done nothing publicly to set the record straight. You have created and fostered an unwelcoming environment for any unsupported candidate and deterred qualified candidates from volunteering to run. Diverse viewpoints are crucial because they ensure that decisions are made through fair and balanced processes. Having individuals with varying beliefs on the committee helps to prevent groupthink and allows for a broader range of ideas to be considered. This in turn leads to more effective policies and programs that better serve the interests of our students. Furthermore, diverse viewpoints promote inclusivity, encourage critical thinking, and help to build trust and understanding among community members and the broader community. I hope that the school committee and the community will reflect on their actions and stop these divisive behaviors that are the opposite of inclusive. I urge you to consider the importance of diversity of thought and impact in your actions on the community and our schools. It is your job to lead the entire community,
It's 3 minutes.
not to represent only one group and to stay silent and ignore what is happening. The students and our children are watching.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to participate tonight? Yes, please.
Hi. Wendy Thurman, 472 Farmers Road. I want to thank Tara and Heather for having the courage to speak tonight. And thank all of you, because you guys really do good work for the town and our kids. Congratulations, Joanna and Amanda. First, I just wanted to say what concerns me most is not what you guys do as a committee, but it's the elections. I don't think we can deny that anymore. There's a small group in town, some are here tonight, and they're working tirelessly behind the scenes to really make sure that the school committee consists of candidates whom it deems worthy. These people seem to want to tell us how to think as if their observations and opinions are correct and factual and should be accepted by all. And this really scares me, because dissent is fundamental to any democracy. Differences of opinions and finding middle ground often result in some extraordinary positive things. And it would be helpful if this small group stops thinking that they know what is best for the rest of us. I have not voted in every town election, and I have not attended many school committee meetings, but I do not feel that this should exclude me or anyone else ever from being civically involved in this town. The message that's being sent by a loud few is scary to me. I fear that we're turning capable people away from becoming involved because the bar for school committee candidates is being set by this very outspoken group. Not every person is privileged enough to have the time or childcare needed to attend town meetings or volunteer throughout their adult lives. This does not mean that they're not worthy once their professional, financial, and family circumstances allow them to make this commitment. Disparaging reputations, spreading rumors seem to be a pattern over the last 2 school committee elections. Why can't these people simply endorse their candidates of choice without personally insulting other candidates? After this last election, I do believe that more parents in town are aware of what's happening behind the scenes. I urge them to get involved, to speak up, and not to be threatened by this small group that seems to have very little tolerance for differences of opinion. And if they're listening tonight to this and they're not here, I hope that they're not letting themselves be silenced by this group in town.
Thank you, Wendy. Does anyone else want to participate tonight? Yes, please do.
Alex Vertikov, 315 Oak Street. I'd just like to quickly say a few words. I read in the news, and obviously the members of the committee and the administration know much better than me the details, and I don't know much else about the Booster Club and some things that may have happened there. And obviously I understand that there are issues with the school and name and likeness, but I'd just like to say that the Booster Club really, I think, in my personal experience, has done a lot of good for the and for the athletics teams especially, like in the past recent years they didn't have it because of fundraising, but like they would be distributing money to each sports team to use for senior night or whatever needs they see fit. So I just like to express, I think that club or that kind of organization does a lot of work that benefits the students, and I just urge, I think, the administration and the school committee and whoever that whenever possible, if the situation arises, that I think having an organization like that really benefits the town and the school and everyone here. And so if it's possible where whatever changes are made or whatever is deemed fit so that the school can continue to have a positive relationship with a group like that, I think that it would be really beneficial to everyone, and that's something that needs to be taken into account.
Thank you, Alex. Does anyone else want to participate tonight? Okay. Seeing none, should we go back? Do we have any audiovisual or not?
Okay, are we just going to plug in? Steve, are we going to plug in?
Steve? Okay.
Okay, we're going to plug in.
5
Oh,
minutes.
Nelson's here. Well,
We've got a whole team here.
can you just do this while
Yeah.
we talk about something else? Okay, great. Oh, you know what? You didn't open the public hearing on school choice.
Oh,
Should you do that?
yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm new to this. Do I have to do a motion?
Yeah, so I can just frame it up to say that this is the night when the school committee takes its annual vote about whether or not to participate in school choice, so it's a fairly routine matter, but you're required to have a public hearing regarding that choice, so yeah, you have to make a motion to open it up for the
Alright.
public choice
Do I have
hearing.
a motion to open up the
School choice.
school choice discussion?
moved.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All right, would anyone like to talk in public participation about the school choice?
Not intra-district. No, I'm sorry, I'll explain it so that everybody knows what we're talking about.
yeah.
Yes, it's not intra-district. So this is that every district in Massachusetts is required to accept non-resident students unless the school committee decides that they're not going to participate in school choice. And Westwood has historically never done that. So if a district participates in school choice, then we would have to accept non-resident students at a rate of 75% of the current per pupil, but not more than $5,000. So for us, that would be $5,000.
Can you just clarify, this does not include the Boston students who are part of the?
No, the MECRO program is not school choice. That's a separate program, and that involves Chapter 70 money and a very sizable grant. It's funded differently.
Okay. Would anyone want to participate in this public hearing?
Just signing up, enrolling. So in other words, so right now, we enroll students who reside in Westwood, right? If you participate in school choice, then we would accept students from other towns.
And there's only a public hearing on the school choice. Do you want, Eileen, you want to comment? You want to? Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. I think it's more for the Westwood media, or.
To the right? Here? Like this?
Yep.
Stop? Keep
Great.
going? Okay. All right. Eileen Siegel, 257 Alder Road. I just wanted to just briefly say I support the way the school committee typically goes with not engaging in school choice. I think that just right now we have a lot in our community, and I'm hopeful that while I'm a huge proponent of diversity and inclusion, equity, and everything, I just wanted to support the past decisions and urge the school committee to continue not to engage in school choice at this time. That's all. That's all I want to say.
All right. Would anyone else like to comment on the public hearing? Seeing none, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great.
Okay.
Still need more time?
No, I think Nelson is about to have it for us.
What's that? Not
For the
yet,
motion.
not yet.
At the end.
You need another minute or no? If you have another minute, I'm going to suggest,
Liaison.
if Riley, if you have another minute, I'm going to put you on the spot. I know there was some comments you wanted to
Yes.
talk about, an update on the.
Do that right now.
Yeah, why don't you do that? That'd be
Okay.
great.
First, I would like to thank all of you for letting me take time to speak about some of the work we've done in the Legislative Council this year. I'd also like to thank Ms. Parmalee and Mr. Donahue for sitting in on a lot of our meetings and helping guide a lot of our initiatives. As you may have already known from Mr. Donahue, we've been focusing a lot recently on the issue of car idling due to the negative effects on students' health as well as the environment. We decided to work together with Ms. Waterman's 4th grade class at the Deerfield School to have the students create posters encouraging their own parents to turn their engines off in pickup lines and then post those posters outside of the school. We thought that would be more of an effective tactic for parents to see it firsthand from their own children. To further our work improving sustainability at Westwood, we've worked with a group started by Ms. Parmalee to start composting leftover food from lunch at the schools. That's still happening right now, so there hasn't been any end results yet, but hopefully soon. In addition, we're working with Ms. John Baptiste and Mr. Cordone, who is the head of the food service department, to generate more student feedback regarding school lunches with the ultimate goal of improving the overall quality and amplifying student voices. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Great. You know, I want to say, Riley, that often I am conducting work calls on my way to work, and I pull into my parking spot and haven't finished the call yet. But because of the discussion about idling here, I'm much more conscientious about that now. I can hear your voice in my head, and I shut down.
Charlie.
Yes.
Yes. Westwood Nursery School.
That's right. That's right. So it's having at least a small impact on me. So thank you. Thank you for that work. Okay, we're back in
We're
business,
back.
and I feel like it's going to be smooth sailing here. Okay, and so at this point, I want to. Well, am I turning it over to you? Do
I
have
actually,
your-
I shared the presentation with you, so you can broadcast from yours.
Okay.
Click on the link, hopefully.
Can I do that?
I think you should give it,
No,
oh, that's the memo, but I shared it with you. So.
Just one second. I don't want to broadcast my email inbox. I hope I don't.
There it is.
Okay. Hopefully we'll be back up. All right. So I've asked Steve Allett and Allison Borchers just to give us sort of a quick overview and initial thought. This issue of artificial intelligence in education is all over the media, and educators are talking about it a lot right now. So we thought we would just give a few comments.
Yes, there's a lot to unpack here, but we only have a couple minutes, so we'll go real fast. This is actually a quote from Sundar Pichai, who made this quote back in 2018. If I had seen this even 5 months ago, I think I would have dismissed it as hyperbole. But I would say now that what I've seen with ChatGPT and all those other tools that have kind of emerged since, I do think this is truly disruptive technology. Go so far as to say it's a bit of a watershed moment in terms of not just the schools, but also society in general. So there's a lot to really think about with this. So this is ChatGPT. ChatGPT was really what created the whole buzz that everyone's been talking about. It was released to the public on November 30th last year, and it has really just kind of been in the news everywhere. This is a very kind of basic definition of what ChatGPT is. It's basically almost like a search engine on steroids. You can ask it questions. It's conversational. It remembers what you asked it, and it provides really relevant contextual information that's quite helpful. So I was going to show an example. I can't now. I can show a screenshot if you exit the presentation and go to the next slide. And if you can, so this is for Riley. The prompt is write an ode to the Westwood girls lacrosse team from Westwood, Mass, highlighting their many successes. And had I done this in real time, it would have generated text that previously did not exist. And it creates it on the fly, in the moment. And this is what you would have seen kind of scrolling down the screen, but this is one example. It's very long. ChatGPT does not get tired. It doesn't fatigue. It just keeps going. And so this is just kind of a fun example of something that it can do.
If you had done this in real time, though, it would have been something different than this.
It would have been
completely different
Different than this, yeah.
output.
Yeah, okay.
And I actually would have inserted the word short before O because it just kept going, and I felt like, let's keep it tight. And but it would have been completely different. So if you want to go back,
If you read it out loud, it scans really well too for poetry fans out there.
yeah. So if you can go forward, so we're thinking about ways this could be useful in education, and I think from a student standpoint, it could serve as a really interesting personal tutor. So this is a prompt about, actually, if you go back one, Emily, explain the Doppler effect in words that an 8th grader can understand. And if you read it, it certainly seems like it kind of hits that mark. When I read the response, I had a question. So if you go to the next slide, my question was, what makes sound waves get squished and stretched? And that's what I meant by the conversational dialogue with the ChatGPT. And it gave me an answer, and it was really helpful. And I would imagine that a student could find this quite helpful as well. I will note that I passed this by Greg Schwanbeck, who's a technology coach and high school science teacher. He validated that this is factually correct, but he also mentioned that there's like some nuance about what came out of this and like some missed opportunities that like a teacher would have noted and would have conveyed that to students and made like better connections in what this was doing. But at the same time, it's pretty remarkable, and if a student is at home trying to grapple with a difficult concept, then this could prove to be quite useful. Just 9 other ways a student or a teacher could use ChatGPT. A teacher could use it for lesson plan creation, generate rubrics, assessment questions. It's not perfect, but it's a great way to kind of create ideas and think about how you could use it in a classroom. Beyond that, if you want to advance, so ChatGPT is mostly used for like language and text generation, but it can also be used to basically analyze images. And if you hit advance, this example is actually shows how ChatGPT can analyze an image and actually do coding. So in this, I did not do this example, but someone produced a rudimentary sketch of a website, fed it into ChatGPT. It created HTML code, which is in the top right, and it produced a website, which is shown on the bottom right. So it's just mind-boggling, the range of ChatGPT beyond just text generation and what else it can do. Beyond ChatGPT, there's been what I would call an avalanche of AI tools that have since come out. There are AI image creators. That's a dog playing basketball in the moon in the style of Claude Monet. PDF scanners. You could upload to a certain site, a 100-page PDF and ask it questions, have it summarize the document, whatever it is. It can produce that for you. Khan Academy has an AI bot now that kind of lives on the site that students can interact with. Integration with third-party applications, commercial sites are all over this. Those annoying little chatbots that we're all familiar with. I think they're on their way out in favor of chatbots that are much more relevant and can really kind of interact better with users. And finally, my favorite example is impersonation. Last month, a song called Heart of My Sleeve was released featuring Drake and The Weeknd, with the caveat that Drake and The Weeknd had nothing to do with the song. It was completely AI generated. They were able to mimic their voices. They were able to mimic their style. And that song, it turned the whole entertainment industry on its head, and you're like, oh boy, this is interesting. So the implications are far-reaching. I do want to bring it back to Westwood Public Schools, and actually I'm going to have Allison talk a little bit about.
Turn it over to Allison for the worries. Okay.
So Steve got all the optimistic part. I got the like scary doom and gloom part. You know, and you know, my joke is that anybody who's ever seen any movie or a TV show where there's AI involved, you know, it ends very badly for all of us. So I think. So that there's that level of worry that is out there, but that's beyond our scope. I really want to think about what are the worries for us within education. And there are kind of both ethical and educational sort of dilemmas we're going to have to sort through. You know, one, just to Steve's point that he just made about the reliability and manipulatability of tools. It's going to be important that as we introduce educators and students to these tools in a classroom, that we do so in a way that helps them understand those two things and their implications, right, for not only using the tools, but for themselves in the world from now on, right? If it can happen to Drake, it can happen to you. That's the thing that I think people have to start internalizing. Academic integrity. It's a whole new landscape. You know, where is the line between my work and not my work? And what do we decide about that? That's going to be a major kind of conversation that we'll have to have. I think we want to think about the psychology of the thing. There is this thing in neuroscience about the connection between productive struggle and development. And when you remove productive struggle from the equation, what happens to our learning over time? So, you know, just handing this out kind of willy-nilly is clearly not a great idea for children, and we don't want to do that. I also want to say, I think about an example like social media, which kind of hit the world full force before people really thought through the possible implications in terms of people's growth and development, especially for teens and people who are in the middle of identity formation. And I think with hindsight, we might say there might have been some better sort of roadblocks put up or slowdowns put up so that we were protecting kids in terms of the developing sense of self and their developing sense of relationship with other people. So those are all things we're going to have to talk about and think about. On the educational front, just thinking about what does this mean around skill development. Writing is a skill, but it's very tied up with other skills, with thinking skills. A lot of us learn kind of formal writing processes, which we don't go ahead and use, but the process of doing that helps us learn to kind of think through, clarify ideas, and communicate them better. And if we take away some of those processes and the struggle involved, will we undermine the capacity for clear thinking? And certainly we don't want to do that. And that seems to be, you know, going out of style anyway, so we need to bring it back. Creativity, you know, sometimes creativity takes time and struggle and patience and all of those things. So we have to think about how this is all bound up. Another piece for educators is thinking about how we're going to keep up. You know, K-12 education is a notoriously not very nimble type of institution. I think we've had to get a little better at that thanks to recent events, but I think we are really going to be thinking about what do we do to kind of keep up with the pace of things. So kind of thinking through implications, we know that at least two major policies that you all have say about are going to need to be revisited sometime in this next year, one on acceptable use and one on academic integrity. And there may be others too, that as we kind of go through this process, we realize, oh, it's going to come up in something about community relations as well, for example. Implications for practice, I think a good side of this is it forces us in education to really be clear, incredibly clear about the goals of what we're doing. Why are we teaching this thing the way we've taught it? What is that about? What's the learning for? So that we know when to use the tool and when not to use the tool. I think that's going to be a big piece. I think it's pretty clear that like other forms of technology that have hit the world in a sort of big and splashy way, we probably can't create a bubble for children and say we're never going to do this here. And I'm not sure that would be wise. Given that it's out there and everybody's going to be grappling with it, our best kind of chance, I think, is to model what it looks like to use this well, provide access and practice and support for students. But we've got to figure out how to do that as best we can, too, which leads to teacher training and support, right? You cannot help support people using something if you haven't used it yourself. And so kind of our first order of business is doing some training with our own staff to make sure we know what it is, we know how to use it, we know what it's good for, other than, you know, I've used it a little bit to write, also bad poetry too. And then we need to think about family communication. This is a major shift. This is not a small thing. This is going to kind of fundamentally change a lot of things in education, I think, moving forward. And so we'll need to be clear and direct about, you know, what we're doing and what we're not doing and why. So and what we're doing next is the following. We have a big training coming up on Friday where we are gathering together all the building leaders and curriculum leaders throughout the district to take a first pass at really understanding what is this stuff, what's it about. For the folks who have used it, it'll be a chance for them to really come together and talk about it. For folks who haven't, it'll be a chance to sort of play around and get to know what it does for the first time. We are going to form a working group because I think this is the sort of thing that as it develops, we're going to have a group of people that's keeping up with it and who's really kind of interested and has some expertise. They'll be monitoring developments and sharing up-to-date information and making recommendations to us within the district and to you all too. We have Jim Looney, who I think is probably gone home and gone to sleep, which is good. He is offering a professional development course. So sort of our first wave of teachers who are really excited about this, interested in learning more, I think are all going to be hopping in there to do some of the advanced guard work. And then finally, I think we really need to be thinking about who and what we are consulting and collaborating with. So obviously, we'll have to be paying attention to what comes out of the state and DESE. But, you know, local universities have really been grappling with this. People in the field or other kind of districts nearby. So we'll have a lot of other people in the world who can help us sort of navigate. But I think it's going to be a really interesting couple years. So that's, yeah.
Questions or comments?
I always look at Abby when we talk about AI. She's very worried.
Yeah, don't do
Great, thank you very much. Stay tuned on
Thank
that.
you. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, I just want to share a couple of fun things from both from the middle school, as it happens. So, taking out of order here. So actually, we had a grade 8 wellness field trip, and the teachers at the middle school tell me this is the first PE field trip like ever at Thurston, So about a month ago, both teams had the opportunity to go on this field trip to the Central Rock Gym, this indoor climbing gym in Randolph. And it turns out that a couple dozen of our 8th graders regularly climb at this gym. About half of them participate on the competition team. In fact, I think we have somebody who's like nationally ranked in our age group. And so they compete in like bouldering, top ropes, and speed. I don't even know what that is, but it sounds hard. So the PE teachers at the middle school decided that they would partner up with the gym. They went to get trained themselves to learn how to do different things. And then the teachers who were trained and these students who have this skill set were the facilitators for the field trip for all of our 8th graders. And apparently it was a really great trip. They did invite me, and I was not able to go, which I sort of wish I could. And then the other part of me was like, that sounds really challenging, but maybe some other time. But what they talked about was they used words like mental toughness, resiliency, problem solving, strength, right? Sounds like it was a really great event. So here's a picture. This is Ms. Tornatore. I want to thank her, Mr. Whittlesley, and Mr. Whalen also were involved in here, some of our kids on the day of the trip. So that was awesome. And then also I just want to mention that we have a pollinator garden that's going in at the middle school. You might have seen it sort of under construction. The middle school is building and designing it, and it's going to be the home to many native plants that provide and sort of restore some habitat for the declining numbers of pollinators in the area. And this pollinator garden is going to play a major role in our 7th grade ecosystems unit. So kids will be able to really see the ecological relationships in action. And so that's being headed up by our science teachers, Mike McCarthy and Andrea Morrill, and also our math science department head, Katie Clark. They've been collaborating. Here are some kids who were on a trip to get some of the materials to build the garden, and then here they are at work, starting to construct it. So thanks to the folks who are leading that up.
Can I just say
Yes.
big thanks to the PTO too.
Oh, financing it?
They've supported all of this, and they even answered the request to help us get all of the dirt and loom that goes with this, and we put out a request to the parent community to say, who has a dump truck to help us pick this up? And somebody responded.
Wow.
And did all of that.
Oh, that's great.
Not just one person responded, multiple people responded. with
Wow.
dump trucks.
Multiple dump
Told
trucks.
the strangest ask of the PTO.
Well, that's great.
We did it.
Oh, great. Well, thanks to the PTO. Thank you. And then this, I want to mention that the combined families of the to-be Pine Hill School, Deerfield and Hanlon, had a really nice event last weekend that Allison was able to go to. It was like a family fun run and activity event, and I think like 300 people registered for this fun run, so quite a success. It's wonderful to see sort of the two communities already starting to think about coming together. So thank you to the PTOs for that event as well. Okay, on to, yes. Oh, the Downey. Great. All right, thanks to the Downey community as well. All right, this is less fun, but Leva's going to talk about summer capital projects.
Depends on your definition of fun.
It does. Leva's very excited. I'm sorry.
Department enjoys it. So
Okay.
actually, well, it's a busy summer, so I'd say it's stressful for them. But I have a list of summer projects up on the screen. These are some, but not all of the projects that we are contemplating and scheduling for the coming summer. So we do have a facilities and capital budget that we are able to deploy and use for all of these projects this summer. I'll just highlight a couple of these. So we have fire alarm panel upgrades at Downey and Martha Jones. These are long overdue, and the panels are outdated and really needed replacement. So each of those is over $50,000. So I'm flagging those because these are expensive projects, and our budget quickly depletes once we start engaging in these contracts. We have a conversion of phones at Downey, so we have old phones in our building, and it's time to go voice over IP, as many offices are now. Some of our buildings have it, others don't. Downey was one that required attention, and it was the building that had the oldest controller. So the central controller for the central office was at a point where we could no longer update the software. And so that was the first one we tackled, but we will eventually attend and address other buildings. So that's a project underway this summer as well. It might even happen as early as June before the start of ESY, because Downey is full in the summer, so we have a lot going on there. I'd also highlight that we have rooftop replacements that are due at Westwood High School. So these are rooftop units, HVAC units that are that date to the establishment of this building, and so they're over 20 years old. They're approaching that, and they are in need of replacement. Some of them in particular have been serviced over and over again, so there's a pattern of failure, and those are the ones we'll tackle first. And we are happy that we have a quote, and we are ready to go. We're rearing to go to install projectors, speakers, and a screen at Martha Jones. So that's another one that will be a substantial cost, but an important project to allow Martha Jones to have the same capacity for presentations and events that some of our other buildings benefit from. So those are some of the projects. I also want to say this year we were able to replace some rooftop units at Thurston. So over one of the modular sections, we were replacing at least 4 HVAC units. That was partially funded by the Green Communities grant that Tom Philbin always secures for Westwood, so I'm very grateful for his efforts. We contributed about $100,000 from our funds to also make that project successful. So that happened this year, and then we also have been replacing lights and going LED at Sheehan. And the installation of those lights is wrapping up as we speak, or in the next week or two. We should be done with the light replacements for the Sheehan School. That also is Green Communities grant fund. So those are some projects completed this year. Thanks to the town meeting vote and support from voters, we will be like fully engaged with the network upgrade this summer. And Steve Willett actually is leading that work, so he's in the details on it, but he and I are collaborating on the funding, and we really needed that town meeting article to get us to the last dollar, and now that we have it, we know we'll be able to complete that project this summer. The other thing that has been funded is the auditorium project, and that is not yet scheduled for this summer. We're waiting on electrical drawings and specs from an engineer who we hired. So once we've got those, we can go out to bid. And procurement is the biggest challenge sometimes, procurement and our own team capacity in engaging in more projects. But we are interested in hearing if there's anything that is bubbling up through the community or that you hear needs to be done.
Can I actually ask you a question? Because one thing I did hear, I noticed that the boiler replacement and or repair at Downey is on there, and I happened to be in the Sheehan the day that the boiler kind of, I don't even know why, I don't know what happened, but there was water all over the
We had
floor.
a leak at the Sheehan
Yeah.
this year, yes.
Has that been addressed?
I think it was the feed water tank, and we've replaced it.
Okay.
Actually with a feed water tank that was ordered for the Deerfield.
Okay.
So we happened to have a tank
That
in our
worked out.
buildings, on
That's
site,
great.
in the
Yeah.
district. And we pivoted and made the replacement at Sheehan.
Okay.
And we were able to patch Deerfield.
Okay.
So hopefully that will be just enough to get us
Yeah,
through
that's great.
until Pine Hill opens.
And then my other question is, I'm assuming there are things probably at Deerfield and Hanlon that can be repurposed to other schools, or does that not happen?
So the Deerfield we probably wouldn't touch immediately, but Hanlon, we will be looking at everything in the facilities. I don't know that we have a lot of new equipment there, but we will be,
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a process we have to go through to surplus things that are worth more than 10,000, so we'll have to look at that
Okay.
with the school committee when
Thank you.
Hanlon is closed.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Lama.
Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Lon. Just say one more thing for the superintendent's report. I just want to note that that DESE had a team on site this week for the coordinated program review, which is a review that happens periodically is it still every 6 years with the mid-cycle in 3? Yeah. And this involves looking sort of at everything we do in terms of special ed, civil rights, some other gen ed requirements, and English learner education. And it is a massive undertaking because we have to supply them with all kinds of documentation and data. Thank you to, I know, the parent community who responded to some surveys. Many, many people were interviewed and observed over the last couple days. And Abby Hanscom has, I don't know, probably spent 2 years getting ready for the last 2 days. So I had the opportunity to meet at the very end of it. I swoop in at the end and speak to one of the evaluators, and he met with Abby and me at the end of the day today. And based on what he said, I think we should expect a really outstanding report. In fact, he sort of said some nice things and then asked me if I knew what our secret was. And I think there's a complicated recipe, but I think that highly skilled, knowledgeable leadership has a lot to do with it. So I want to thank Abby because I think it's possible she won't be here when the report comes in. So I just want to thank her and publicly acknowledge her for all of that, that work. And that was it.
Okay. All right, why don't we go on, we already did public participation, why don't we go on to the school committee chair liaison reports. I'll be quick. Mostly some logistical items. We are going to circulate a draft schedule for next year. We don't need to talk about it now, but please take a look at that. Second item, Harley will work on, we're going to try to do a summer meeting as we have in the past. So we'll hopefully try to do that sooner rather than later, because sometimes we wait till too late. So do take a look at your summer calendars. We'll work with Tim on that as well. And then finally, third logistical item, I met with Tim, when was he here, last Friday? But he's eager to meet with all of you in the next few months as well. He's going to be here multiple times, I think 3 or 4 times over the course of the next 6 weeks. So again, we'll coordinate with Harley. He'd love to connect with each of you as well.
Cool.
So that was it on logistics. What else do we have? School building update or
Yep.
policy review? Yep.
School building, we are at 50% completion on the building. Not the whole project, just the actual construction of the building. And we are also at a point where we're starting to look at the contingency. As you recall, when we went out to bid, we had pretty disastrous news on bid day. And luckily, the town contributed 1.1 million of ARPA funds. We contributed the 2 million we had in mitigation funds. That closed the gap with no effect to the taxpayer. So we were able to continue with the projects. Now we're sort of in the opposite scenario where we have had a really, really great build so far. The weather really helped us out this winter, It was mild, which was great for us. We have an amazing design team, an amazing construction team. And we're at the point now where we think, you know, the contingency, our big ticket items were asbestos and ledge, and we've pretty much mitigated both of those. So we're starting to think about, hey, if we're gonna have money at the end of the day, what are we gonna do with it? And so we had a permanent building committee meeting today, where we talked about a number of alternates. And these are things that we originally had in the project and then had to strip out when we went through all that value engineering to get down to the lowest number possible. So the things we're putting back in that we voted in today are fencing and sports netting for around the fields. We had to take those out. We figured we would deal with it later. We were always hoping to have contingency money to put those back in. And I am very happy to say that we are going to be able to put the fencing and the sports netting around the fields back in. We are adding back in site furniture near the building, and this includes, so these are landscaping boulders, raised garden beds, sand and water play tables, benches, picnic tables, and also a non-skid coating that, so if kids are running on it, they're not going to skid on it. I think Emily is particularly happy about this alternate going back in because it was, you know, it took out things from the playground that we really wanted to keep, so we were able to get those back in at this time. And we're also adding back in a number of site furnishings near the fields, again, that we had to take out, and this includes players' benches near the baseball field / softball field, aluminum bleachers for audience members, and the same for the ball fields, soccer goals, trash receptacles, and a birdhouse. So, very lovely. So all of that is, we voted today to put back into the project. And then other things we're looking at that we're not quite ready to move on. We're looking at putting in a foundation and a slab for a shed. I know that Tom Carey really would love to have a shed behind the building. So in this project, we won't build the actual shed, but we could put the foundation and slab so that it's ready to go. Changing the walkways, all the walkways were originally concrete, and then we switched to asphalt to save money. Now we think we're going to be able to put them back to concrete, which is just more long-lasting. It doesn't break up as much, particularly with the snow. We want to put in a portable pitching mound. When you're using a softball field versus a baseball field, you need a portable mound. So we're going to add that back in, hopefully. And then the big one that we're looking at, this is still, we're just not sure about this one, but we are looking at making that multi-purpose field a turf field. Because we know that we only have 2 turf fields. There's a huge need for them. If we can swing it, we're going to do it. It was always something, at the very, very beginning of this project, we talked about it, and then we said, there's no way, it's so expensive, we're never going to do it. But we might be able to do it. So we're looking into all of those things. Fingers crossed the build continues to go as well as it has. Hopefully we could get those things in, and stay tuned. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Amanda?
No, I'll just say, we all went to see it.
Yep.
And it's amazing.
Yeah.
So thank
It's
you
gonna
for
be
all of
good.
your hard work.
It's good.
And
It's gonna be
to
good.
I can never remember the plant, is it PVC? Is that the name
The
of the?
PBC, yes.
There's so many
Permanent
acronyms.
Building Committee.
Thank you
yes.
to their hard work in
Yeah.
all the meetings, because
Yeah.
once you go in and you see it, it's really like,
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think once it's done, probably before we move the kids and the teachers back in, we'll have a window where we're gonna hopefully offer community tours. So members from the community can sign up and just walk through. We need to get out of the hard hat phase before we do that. So there's gonna be a sweet spot between substantial completion and moving in, when hopefully we'll be able to open it up to everybody.
Thank you. Amanda, do you want to give an update on the policy?
Sure. So I figure we can just talk a little bit about the Section K and then the process moving forward. So just a few key changes that came up in that section. Hopefully everybody had a chance to review it. But policy KCD is just want to highlight that the school committee is supposed to vote in order to accept any cash donations. So I think what's been happening and what would like to continue is that smaller gifts will be directed to the PTOs so that we're not while we really appreciate every gift, we're not voting for every kind of low denomination gift that somebody wants to give. So that is in there. And then KF is the community use of buildings. The MASC policy is quite good, and it highlights the need to provide liability insurance, which is something that we need to make sure that we're doing when we're renting out the buildings. And also, I think this is important since we just updated the rental rates. We hadn't done that in like 15 years. It highlights that rates can only be adjusted when there is a no cost factor to the district. So I think that's something important that we keep in mind, because up until now, we potentially were losing money when we were renting out our space. So as we work with different providers, that's something that we'll have to consider. I think there are some groups out there that aren't obviously thrilled with the increase.
Can I just clarify one thing
yes.
about the insurance? So to say that the need to provide liability insurance, in other words, our insurance doesn't cover
Exactly, the
outside
group needs,
organizations.
yes, the
They
group will need to
their
provide their
own.
own insurance, absolutely, yes,
Okay.
sorry, I wasn't clear about that. So that's something all the groups need to provide, not us. And then the last one is, section KBE is relations with boosters and other parent organizations. The MASC policy is, much more specific, so I think it's great that we're adopting that now. And then in terms of moving forward regarding the policy work, we're almost done. We've been working on it, I think, for 18 months now, and we've had just about monthly meetings. We've had, we discuss them in this forum, and then the public has a month to provide input if they want before we vote and accept it. So we only have a couple sections left, so the hope is that we can wrap it up in our May and June meetings, or subcommittee meetings, and then in July, we could vote to adopt all of the policies. And then I know we had talked about, with the equity audit coming out, we need to look at the policies. So what I'd like to propose is that we adopt the policies in July. That way, district leadership and administration can kind of run with it. And then in the fall, go back and look at everything again with an equity lens, and make updates as necessary. So that'll kind of be going in tandem with the equity audit work that will hopefully be going by then.
So, you just went through a year-long policy of looking at the policy.
Right.
Are you want to look at it again?
So we always looked at it like high level in terms of equity, making sure that like pronouns were correct and that, we were following the MASC guidelines, and they're up to date anyways. So I think we're in really good shape, but I think we just need to do our due diligence to make sure that any recommendations coming out of the equity audit are jiving with our policies.
I think there were a few key points in the equity audit where they actually said to us, you need to update your policies.
And that wasn't captured in our updates?
Exactly.
Yeah, I would just say that the equity audit, the auditors weren't looking at the
our
outcome of
policy.
this review,
Right.
right? So I think we're in very good
I think
shape.
we're in
That-
good shape.
And to Amanda's point, we've had the MASC field rep leading us through this process. He's been bringing us the MASC model policy, which is like what most districts, use. And so I think their policies are very good.
Yeah. I just
very
want to
good
make sure
base.
we're not repeating work
Sure.
for the sake of repeating work.
Right.
Right.
So the way I was kind of envisioning it is we'll obviously adopt it in July and then have one maybe long meeting in the fall with specific stakeholders and go through it and make sure that everybody's on board and feeling good about it in conjunction with the equity audit. Not do this whole, month,
Right.
meeting after meeting after meeting.
I do think, I appreciate your recommendation the process has always been like, we're doing this monthly thing, right? And approving each section as we go, so that at the moment that we're done, it's just one vote to adopt the whole thing, right? You've done all the approvals all along. And if we can hit that mark to have that done, so that for the beginning of the school year, we've got all the policies that you've discussed for 18 months like in place, I think that would be very helpful to us.
And then the other piece is Charlie was the other school committee member on the policies, so I don't know if anybody wants to join me.
It's really fun.
But it's almost
There's only
over.
2 more meetings, right?
Right.
Two more meetings.
There's only 2 more meetings.
Good time to join.
And the sections I think are pretty easy ones, so. or not easy, but not as long, not as much reading. I'll jump at once.
All right,
Thank
great,
you.
thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
All right, great. Well, thank you. Anybody else have any updates, anything? No? I just do want to do a call out. I'm very excited, Riley, and Amy Davenport said this at the Westwood High School PTO. They're doing like a tour, I understand, of all elementary schools during the senior week. And then
Yes.
it's back. So I thought that was a very exciting new tradition. So that sounds pretty cool. I don't know. So I want to call out that. So great. Good. So I'm going to suggest, if it's okay, we're a little dicey on time, and I want to make sure we have time for math and Thurston. Not we don't want financial. Lem, if you could just think about if there's, I think we all did the pre-read. If you can just think when we get to the financial review, if there's anything you really want to highlight, if you have any questions. But why don't we go to math? Because I want to make sure we have a lot of time for math.
Okay.
Excited about.
Do you want, why don't, do you want to?
No, I'm good. I can see you here. I can
you
see
can
here.
see.
I've got
Okay,
all my
great.
stuff. I'm great. Thank
Great.
you. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to kind of share this tonight. And your packet includes the draft report. And process-wise, we had a committee that started last spring, kind of buttoned up this fall. And then since this fall, the leadership team has met several times. And that's the elementary math coordinator, middle school department head, high school department head, and myself to sort of take the work of the committee and sort of hammer it into a report and recommendations format. So that report that you're seeing is still a draft. It will go from here to back to the committee to just do one final look, and then we'll publish it in its glorious entirety for the universe after that. But in the meantime, this presentation will be out there for public to see. It's really fun. Stay fun. All right, so I want to thank the review team. It was a great team, and we have these sort of bigger teams for reviews in part so we can get a lot of voices in the room and make sure we have representation from throughout the district, including educators and administrators, parents, a school committee rep, thank you, Tony, a few people who wear multiple hats too. Both Tony and one of our faculty members had dual roles as parents and others, we had a student rep who was fantastic, Ashley, and a parent rep too. And I have a kind of quotation to kick us off. So I bought this book way back at the start of the math review because I thought it sounded great. It's How Not to Be Wrong, the Power of Mathematical Thinking by Jordan Ellenberg. He is a professor of mathematics at the University of Wisconsin. And his book is essentially sort of an argument about kind of why we teach math in this sort of universal and robust way. And I started it in the spring, got busy, set it aside, picked it back up again recently. And I was struck by this quote in particular because it sort of echoes a theme that came out of the review. And he says, you may not be aiming for a mathematically oriented career, that's fine, most people aren't, but you can still do math. You probably already are doing math, even if you don't call it that. Math is woven into the way we reason, and math makes you better at things. Knowing mathematics is like wearing a pair of X-ray specs that reveal hidden structures underneath the messy and chaotic surface of the world. Math is a science of not being wrong about things, its techniques and habits hammered out by centuries of hard work and argument. With the tools of mathematics in hand, you can understand the world in a deeper, sounder, and more meaningful way. And I think one theme that came up in this review is the team talked about the way that our math program needs to work for all kids, whether they want to be engineers or teachers or web designers or chefs, whatever their kind of life path is going to take them on. And they felt like a good program is going to do exactly that and exactly what Ellenberg describes, which is to help people better understand the world. So the team's vision actually kind of sounds in some ways similar to what this professor came up with. So our vision statement: students in the Westwood Public Schools use math to explore and understand the world around them. The concepts and skills they master at school set them up for success in academic, professional, and civic life. They use the structure and language of math to pose questions and solve problems. They approach new challenges with curiosity. They persevere, think flexibly, try different strategies, and work collaboratively. All students have access to courses that support their academic and career goals. Course pathways are flexible and interconnected, and resources are available to students seeking additional challenge or support. And I want to note that that concept of flexibility comes up twice, once in terms of student thinking, but once in terms of programmatically what we need to be doing better. Finding a way to make it so that students aren't all on exactly the same sequence of math classes if, as we know is the case, they don't have exactly the same kind of long-term goals or exactly the same needs. That kind of thinking doesn't necessarily make sense. So, before I dive into a little bit about the recommendations, I want to talk briefly about cycle and about a couple of the things that we dug into. So the cycle is basically, each year one or more of these curriculum kind of areas comes up for review. We pull a team together and look both internally and externally and generate some reviews that then get sort of implemented and worked on by groups of people within the district. So after the math review is complete, implementation will be done with the leadership team kind of leading their departments and smaller groups of teachers to get the work actualized. Okay. Right now we are a little bit into digital literacy and computer science and library, and Dory is sitting in on that one. That will wrap up in the fall, and we'll launch world languages in the fall, which will be a fun one because it's an interesting landscape. Some of the things we looked at, things is sort of near and dear to us as our own curriculum maps to try and understand what we are doing right now, curriculum-wise, but also looking at those versus what's out there in the DESE frameworks. How aligned are we? MCAS data is obviously important. We did some pretty robust survey work with students and their families. Our leadership team did outreach to other districts, and we also took learning walks. So people from all levels wandered around the district on a given day and saw math taking place at elementary, middle, and high school, all in one fell swoop, which turns out a very powerful learning experience for teachers. And every time they do it, they want to do it more. So. I'm going to talk about major themes, and then I'm going to highlight one or two of the recommendations on the slides because you have it all in the packet, and I'm keeping it moving. So I'd say these are things that just sort of people ended up talking a lot about. One was this idea of just right math experiences that provide appropriate challenge and are relevant to students' long-term goals. Now, that long-term goal notion becomes more relevant as kids go through their high school career and have a sense of what those goals are going to be. With the little ones, it's going to be a little bit more kind of the same bucket of stuff. We're all doing multiplication in 3rd grade, but as you get to 10th grade or 11th grade, as students start to have a sense of where they're going, we want to have options for them to think about what builds toward that. Equitable access to high quality curriculum and culturally responsive instruction for all students. So making sure that our practices are really helping support all kids getting access to high level courses, all kids getting access to rigorous instruction, all kids really learning at the sort of top of what they can learn. And this could involve a lot of different things. I'll dive into it a little more in a second. And then collaboration for teachers across levels was an important theme. There's something about the way math works where it's really helpful for elementary educators to know what it looks like in middle school and for middle school teachers to know what it looks like in high school so that the foundation that they build is actually sort of helping support later learning and vice versa. It's really helpful for educators on the older end of the spectrum to kind of know what students learned before so that they can help them kind of graft that all together. Okay. On the district-wide, I want to highlight in particular number 3, but I do want to talk about the equity recommendation for just a second, which is to say this could look different. We could come at this in some different ways. There's always sort of materials when it comes to equity, but there's also things like what are you doing in the classroom that connects what the math is to students' lives, and are you doing that in a way that is responsive to all the students in the room? So that kind of culturally relevant practice is important. But there are also things like our placement process where we need to really examine when we do math placement, are we doing it in a way that's sort of bias-free, and we're not sort of predetermining who goes where, right? There are programs out there that help reduce sort of issues around inequity that exist in the universe. So if you are a student who is really interested in math and would like to be able to do more math, but you have a job outside of school and don't have a lot of free time to do a whole lot of extra math, are there things we can do programmatically in the schools that are going to help you? We've participated in some programs like that to support some of our students in the past. So, the one I really wanted to lean into, though, was number 3, okay? One of the things we really learned from the parent survey, which is not super surprising, is parents really would like to hear more about what's going on in math. How does it work? What's happening in classrooms? What are the ways that teaching looks different than it used to? And also, how do those pathways work? How do I make sure my student, my child, ends up going in a direction that's going to be good for them? So, I'm going to pause for a second. I'm doing a lot of words really fast, so I just want to, okay. Any point you want to jump in. At the elementary level, we have traditionally, at least in the last few years, seen really strong results. So I would sort of characterize our elementary recommendations as really refining what's already working pretty well. And the thing I wanted to highlight here are, what are they? A couple. Number 3, the math specialists. Okay. The role of the math specialist is sort of shifting. Before the pandemic, we had a highly structured intervention program that was about certain topics at each grade level. And the specialists were also doing some work by pushing into classrooms and supporting teachers and collaborating. During the pandemic, they did a ton of curricular support, really helped teachers make the big shift from teaching in person to teaching online and teaching in a hybrid model. And they really provided tools and supports and structures for that. And now coming out of the pandemic, where the range of the types of learning gaps is a little bit more hard to get our hands around, I think, they are doing more kind of varied approaches to intervention. So different groups of kids, different structures are being tried in different buildings. And we're looking to sort of pull together, look at everything that's going on right now, and figure out a way, what's the model that's going to work best moving forward. So we're kind of in this experimenting, trying to figure it out, and that number 3 is going to be really interesting to see where we go next. I also want to talk about number 5. It was a recommendation about a very specific skill area. So we identified through some assessment that we could use a little shoring up in terms of grade 3 and multiplication concepts. And this is a great one. I love this because it's such a foundational skill. That sense of how numbers work together in multiplication builds to proportionality and fractions, which builds down the road to sort of algebra and algebraic thinking. So if we can really work in grade 3, we're going to set the stage for kids to do great down the road. So the middle school, I want to highlight 1 and 5, which are really tightly connected. The middle school has been working with a backbone curriculum resource that it has sort of, at the time when it first came out, it was like the very first curriculum resource that had an endorsement of being somewhat aligned with what then were the Common Core standards. So we grabbed it and started using it. Since then, Massachusetts did an update, and honestly, some practices in terms of middle school teaching have shifted as well. So we are now kind of working with a backbone resource that teachers have drifted from because it just doesn't work as well as it used to. So our middle school teachers already this year have gone through a process of piloting some units from different publishers. So they're kind of already started on this process. And we're looking to do a full-scale pilot next year. They've identified mid-school math, which is very well aligned. It gets great ratings from people who do curriculum review work, and also has a kind of inquiry-based approach that's a lot more engaging for a lot of kids. That pilot will be for 6th grade, and then the grade level 7th and 8th grade groups. The 7th and 8th grade accelerated groups, which are the pre-algebra and algebra, the work there is going to be sort of more in line with number 5. We're going to try and align with the high school's approach and program, because kids who are doing Algebra 1 at the middle school need to have a comparable experience to kids who are doing Algebra 1 in 9th grade. So we're looking to kind of go that direction with alignment for the accelerated track.
Is there any change? This is the question I always get. Is it in 6th grade when you place them for 7th grade? Is there any change to that philosophy, I guess? Because that's the question I always get.
Can you say that again?
Is it you place them 6th grade, they get placed for 7th grade?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Is there any change to the
Yep.
level? Sorry.
Yeah.
Is there any change to that approach, philosophy, or not? It's
Not, I mean, in terms of, I don't know what that would be. I mean, there are different options that people take in middle school. We're not, at this point, talking about undoing levels in 7th and 8th grade, nor are we talking about leveling in 6th grade, so. But
So I think the issue that a lot of people have, though, is that basically the course of your math
yes,
is determined in middle school, right? And that seems patently unfair. And that, I think, has been a source of frustration for a lot of parents. You know, myself included, because you get put in a class and that class carries through.
I think that the answer to that actually lies in the high school part of the recommendation, so we're going to talk about that. But when we talked about that sort of flexibility, a key high school recommendation has to do with supporting kids who want to move up. And also the high school, for the first time, has started a 9th grade, tell me if I get this wrong, 9th grade level 2 geometry. So we're kind of starting to shift that, so kids have an option to still get to calculus by their senior year without having
Right,
doing
that
the
was
7th
the
and 8th
issue,
grade.
right?
So that was really, it was really that 9th grade class that was the sort of gatekeeper, and this is a shift.
And then just, and maybe you'll talk about this when you get to high school, but the corollary of that is that there's prerequisites for certain science classes, right? So if you are in a level 1 class and it's challenging and you don't do as well, you're then precluded from taking level 1 science, which you could very well take and do well in, but you can't take it because of the prior year algebra class or whatever it is.
We decoupled the bio thing a couple years ago, but now the whole science trajectory has changed. So I think that problem exist anymore, or is that old?
To my knowledge, the only science course with a prerequisite is AP Chemistry sophomore year, but that's only tied to the science grade that year,
Right.
I believe, and not to math. There are no other science courses.
Right. That kind of got pulled apart when we redid the course.
Was that like last year that happened? Because this was
Yeah.
2 years ago.
I used this for physics when I was entering junior year.
Yeah.
Physics is the only course where I can think of.
Yeah.
I think freshman year, if you didn't get a certain grade in algebra, you couldn't take chem, level 1 chem. Okay. Okay, good.
I do know, Dr. Miller was on the math review too, so that's helpful. I can cycle back to him and make sure. At the high school, I wanted to focus on 1 and 6, which are 1, 2, and 6 actually, which are kind of all interconnected in some ways. 1 speaks a little bit to what you're talking about, thinking about, first of all, I think we had a lot of conversation about the sort of terminal class. What is the terminal class of a high school mathematics program? And, traditionally it's kind of gone, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, Pre-Calc, and Calc, right? And depending on whether you did algebra in 8th grade or not, you might have to double up at the high school. So we're starting to sort of address that issue to make that pathway more accessible to more kids. So that's number 1. But number 2 is thinking about, there are certainly a good number of kids for whom calculus makes sense. There are also kids for whom a high-level statistics class makes a lot of sense as a senior class. So the department's going to be looking at the array of options and trying to really make sure we've got them all kind of out there and available for kids. And kind of going along with that, thinking about elective options for students and building up more electives for kids who are really interested in a quantitative elective. Things that are applied math, like a financial literacy course, or things that are sort of computer science oriented, kind of all fall in the math department bucket. Finally, and this is actually kind of exciting, we're looking both at the middle and at the high school level to sort of have a clearer and more consistent approach when we have students who are coming to us already mastering coursework. We have a handful of kids any given time who are like really into math. They're so into math, they take math classes outside of school. And I think of it kind of the way I think of kids who read a lot, right? Or who love art and they're doing this thing. some of those other things are easier for us to accommodate within the context of a regular class. A student who's just a great reader, I can keep him in English class, and it doesn't feel like it's a bad fit. With math, it's a little different. If you really, truly mastered the content, it doesn't make sense for you to sit there and repeat it. So what do we do about these students? And we've tried a whole bunch of different approaches. But we're really going to kind of knuckle down and figure out if we can find something that does actually kind of work, given that that population is small and kind of moves from year to year. That's the challenge, right? I also want to be clear, we are not suggesting that people run out and sign their kids up for lots of things to do this. This is really about trying to work with the handful of students for whom this is truly what they love and they want to do. We're not trying to create a sort of rat race of people thinking they have to do this in order to get into college, because that's not true. I think we're running multivariable calculus next year, a small section, which is super exciting. So I don't even know what that is.
when thinking about these changes and the recommendations of high school, do you have insight or thoughts about what colleges look for and how a child who might be academically strong but wants to go into the humanities, and maybe statistics is a better fit, takes that? Will the colleges generally look down, look up, look fine? Like, is that okay?
They're fine. I mean, we can have guidance come in and talk about it if that would be helpful for parents. I think that it really, there are very elite colleges that do not need to see physics or need to see calculus, and so that should never be the impediment for students. And I think that is 100% true and continues to be true. I mean, that's.
Can I ask a question related to the high school? Yeah. So I know in elementary school and middle school there are the math specialists that you already talked about. Does that role exist at the high school?
It's an interesting question, and you'll notice that there's this replacement of the Math Plus class. The numbers 3 and 4 up here are about supports of different types. We're actually moving in a direction where we've got a specialized support role for mathematics at the high school. And it's designed because really that Math Plus model that we use doesn't work as well as it used to given the change in the schedule that was made. So I think that the idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this person does some sort of push-in support into some classes, but also has availability to support kids outside of class as well, similar to the elementary.
So that could be like for students who have free time during the day, they could meet with a math specialist potentially if they're struggling.
Yeah, I think that's right. It'll be pretty structured first year. It's Amy's brainchild. So do you have anything else you want to throw out about it at this moment?
I would just say I think we'll have the ability to do more intervention work in the classroom, which is really like our highest priority, particularly at the high school level. And during SBOC, we'll have the ability to run a series of seminar-style courses that are really tied to student skills. For instance, the group of students who took geometry freshman year at level 2 might need some algebra 2 support at the start of the year because we haven't really had sophomores who take college prep algebra 2 before. So we want to be able to work with those students and then also work with our students who might need some double dipping for math support as they prepare for the MCAS. And so that flexibility should help us meet a variety of different student needs throughout the year and support students in the classroom who really need it.
But it's a new model that we sort of thought a lot about during the budget process, and it wasn't like we created a new position. It's about allocating the resources and changing the model from the Math Plus class to this kind of intervention
That's helpful.
model. And I would ask Riley, yeah, I mean, I feel like students access their own teachers with some regularity if they need like sort of extra help in math, or just need something, a particular thing clarified.
Yeah, I think all of the math teachers are readily available especially since we have S-Block now in the middle of the day. It's fairly easy to find your teacher for extra help.
Okay, great. That's not an intervention model, but a support available.
Thank you.
So just in terms of like what's going to happen first, as I mentioned, there's some things that are already happening. So the middle school has this, they've done kind of a pass through of a few different pilots. They've got teed up a full-scale pilot for next year. They've also launched a new model for intervention this spring that they think is really promising based on the data so far. So that may be the thing that we're rolling into next year. But these are sort of the next steps looking ahead to the summer. There's a lot of summer work that will happen this year around math and in the school year next year. And then this timeline continues, and you have that in your report as well. Up next, so as I said, we've launched digital literacy and computer science and library media, so that's in process right now. We will tackle the world language review starting in the fall. I think our department head's very excited to get going, so we will probably get going early October. And then we'll kind of get back to what feels like a more normal cycle. We had those couple years that got all stretched out and weird, and the longest social studies and wellness reviews ever. You're going to hear about wellness next month. Very exciting. And so then we'll start kind of getting back on a normal cycle where we have one or two of these per year. Thank you very much.
I think it's good. It's a lot of work, and I know that you guys hear a lot about math from parents, so I think these recommendations are good.
I really do think just that sense that you're talking about of kids like at 6th grade, which seems very young,
Right.
Sort of getting on a path and not having
getting
any chance to move. That
Either
is,
way, right? Because I remember like even trying to go down a level was difficult, let alone go up.
Right.
So.
Well, and then the notion that in order to get to calculus, you need to double up on a full-time math class for a year. That just didn't feel good. And so we did talk a lot about that, and I think the math department had already started really thinking and talking about those things before the review began. So it's a good time to take it on.
Just to maybe the question with Amy, not to preview the budget cycle, is there anything as far as resources that you might think about reallocating, or that may be potential in the next, as part of this, in the next few years that might be asked, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I have two answers to that, and I don't know if you've got one, Amy. I know, so the pilot of the middle school program is definitely going to fit within the parameters of curriculum instruction. If this pilot goes well, we would probably prefer to buy in for 6 years of the program or some extended period of time that's a kind of bigger chunk of change all at once. And so that's one potential. The other thing, this issue of how to support the handful of kids who really do need something sort of out of the box is hard, and we've never really budgeted for that, and I think part of what's made it hard is we've never really budgeted for it. So if we can figure out what to do and what it costs, then you may expect some sort of ask there too.
Thank you.
Anything else you can think of? Now's your chance.
See you in January, she says. Thank you for all the work, Allison.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for.
Thank you. All right. So why don't we go to, so I'm going to ask, why don't we go to TMS next, and we should do the finance, but on finance I just want anything we should be worried about on finance. Maybe we do those two together, yeah, but let's start with TMS.
There are no slides that I
Yeah.
have to do for this, right?
Okay.
No.
Slides for
Okay,
TMS.
very good.
Okay, so I've shared a memo about Thurston capital needs, and hopefully you've had a chance to read. And just to highlight some pieces here is that Thurston is building constructed in 1939, and there are additions and renovations over that 84-year span that make its HVAC system in particular really a patchwork. And so it's a complex system with 3 zones, 2 boilers, and it has required some effort on the part of our facilities director, who's now into his 2nd year, to just even grapple with and understand, wrap his mind around. So first, I've shared with you that our capital needs study, which was a district-wide study commissioned in 2015 by Sims Mamie, is now 8 years old. As a follow-up to that, I have been looking to engage a firm to conduct a study that's a follow-up on that, not really a complete redoing of that same scope of work, because some of the things in our buildings really haven't changed. The windows and the envelopes, for example, at Sheehan really haven't changed in the last 8 years, so it is what it is, and we don't need new photographs of that. We know our buildings, but yet we do need a better assessment and inventory of our equipment, and specific areas that I'm interested in assessing in that follow-up study are electric, fire protection, HVAC, and plumbing. So those were the focuses, and so that would be a follow-up study that we would engage with this summer, looking at all of our buildings except Pine Hill. So that would be the only exception. And we use that to develop both an index and an assessment on replacement cost for items that need attention, updating, replacement, whatever it may be. So that's a goal. We also have underway the last few months, a moisture study. I've mentioned this before, we don't have the results yet. So there's a moisture study that's being done of all of our roofs. So for Thurston, we look at the roof condition through that moisture study specifically. So that's it there. Then in my memo, I've outlined some specific HVAC concerns, and they are really primarily about the pipes at Thurston. So when we, as a district, purchased some univents for Thurston with support from the town, we conducted a phased replacement of classroom univents in the old section of the building. As part of that, we converted the pipes from operating on a steam system to a hot water system. And we didn't replace the pipes, we just changed what was running through them and coursing through them. And so now they are running hot water through them, but they're the same old steam pipes. And we have encountered 4 specific pipe failures in the last year. So I've mentioned the details on that, and the consequences of every pipe failure is that we introduce a repair, and air comes into the system, and then we have to leave the air out, and classrooms and students experience irregular temperatures. So it becomes difficult in real time. So we're aware of this and doing our best to mitigate that. None of the pipe failures were particularly disruptive. I'd say we managed. We didn't have to change anything about the school schedule this year. It happened that some of them occurred over the weekends, but we were never happy about that. So as a next step for HVAC, we've engaged with 2 engineers to conduct an engineering study. They're working independently, but they're going to collaborate at the end to give us their assessment on what to replace first of these old steam pipes, and also where we might use valves in order to help us control the system better. So if there is a failure somewhere, we can isolate that failure and not have it impact the whole building. Or it's never the whole building, but as I said, it's a complex network of 3 zones. And the zones aren't really discretely located, so they're overlapping, and it's a dizzying map. So that's the quick summary on Thurston. The only other thing I'd add is we also this week and the last couple of days have been meeting with Train. Train has given us an energy management system that allows us to monitor temperatures in rooms. We're trying to integrate that so that we can also directly see what's happening in the boiler room through that system. So that's a project that we authorized this year, and we are engaged with the last few weeks. So our facilities director has been working on it.
I do just want to add that when Lemma says that we've had 4 of these pipe failure issues this year, I do think that's significant. I mean, we usually have 1 a year. 4 in a year, that's notable to me and concerning, because it does feel like we're kind of just hanging on. And so this project that we're talking about this summer really was after one of those pipe failures. Lemma and I and Tom Carey were standing in the boiler room with our HVAC guy and really saying, trying to figure out what can we do to try to most proactively prevent something like this from happening again. And it is an esoteric system at this point, to put it mildly. So this was something that's been recommended, and we're hoping it will be helpful. It will decrease Mr. Redmond's stress also, to not wonder every day what's
So the
happening.
consultants are looking at the system and will make a recommendation on replacement, presumably.
Yeah, so some of the pipe is visible to us, and other sections of the old steam pipe is behind walls, but we're trying to identify where the functionality remains. So one of the early discoveries was that there's an old section of steam pipe that is running hot water through our attic. And it's not critical anymore, it's not feeding any of the heating univents, and so we can just kill off that pipe, right, abandon in place. We certainly have to make sure that the attic doesn't get too cold and that there aren't any other repercussions, so we've got to monitor to see what other water is flowing through there. But that is an example. So they're trying to identify for us what we can do to reduce risk.
Okay.
Right.
Maya, has the Thurston come up in the long-range planning committee?
So we've only had 1 meeting.
Mhm.
I am hoping we will have more meetings. I think that the short answer is no, because we had one meeting. So nothing has really come up yet. You know, I was at a PTO last night and someone asked what the priorities for the school committee were for this year. And I said, well, Sheehan is still front of mind for me. And I think, you know, clearly Thurston is right behind it. But there are these other town projects, right, that are in the works and people are talking about, like the fire station and Hale. And so I think we do need the long range planning committee. I think Tony, you and I have talked about this for the school committee, is doing a master capital plan for our buildings, right? So that we know we're not in this Hanlon Deerfield Sheehan situation where we're like, oh my gosh, we've got 3 buildings that are 70 years old. So maybe that's something that we can focus on this year. But that, you know, we can do all we want, but if we don't have the town piece, it's you know, it has to be sort of this concerted effort, and we need that long-range planning team to re-energize.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I think it would be great too if next month we could talk a little bit about Sheehan and just an update there, kind of before we transition, sadly. So if we could just add that.
Other questions for them? So I have a few questions. How worried, I know, are you about a major?
Question for Mike?
Well, no, this is a date, and I actually want maybe the consultants need to come back, about a major system failure, which is the HVAC goes out completely and we can't heat the school for 2 months. That would be a major issue, right? I mean, you may not know the answer, but I think we need to answer that question because it gets to this long-range planning. If Sheehan is next, and we have to debate that, if this building needs to be viable for 20 years, I don't think that HVAC can survive 20 years.
Well, this is what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, are they looking to patch this thing, or are they looking to wholesale replace it so that it can last for 20 years?
Yeah, we'll find out how much we can do, because again, some of the pipe is not really accessible. We've talked about potentially abandoning some sections in place and just running parallel to it, because some of it's behind walls, right? So
Yeah.
that part is hard. It would be a phased project if we are trying to do it. Even, it's not only because of capital issues and funding, but just practically speaking, it's difficult to shut down the entire building and easier to do this in phases given the patchwork system that we have.
Yep.
To reassure you, Tony, the one thing that's good as part of this like complex system is that it's not all reliant on the same plumbing system. So the modulars are functioning off the rooftop units. Some of those rooftop units are brand new and under warranty, so that's reassuring for that section. Even the older rooftop units on the other modular that we haven't replaced are okay, and we've had those assessed. So we don't anticipate failure on that. So it's components of the building that are more at risk, and that's what we have our engineers looking at to assess the plumbing condition in those sections. And so we would you know, have some classrooms that are colder if we have to shut down that zone that's supported there. Unfortunately, what's sad is that some of these are the new univents. You know, so the new univents are functioning, are fed heat through this old piping system. So that's what's unfortunate.
So just to add, so every time one of the pipes is burst, my understanding is air gets into the system, which creates a problem. So what I remember is that the idea is to try to replace as much as possible in one shot, because once you start chopping up pipes to replace, it's better to do it all at that one time, because we're opening the pipes in the system up at that one time.
We've done what we could in each of these 4 instances where there was a leak. So there was one in the cafeteria, and we replaced what we could reach at that point, but there's more to be done.
And in rooms that we have like experienced issues because of air in the system, we've had secondary heating this year through electric, which has been really valuable. So
I'd say that's very limited as a solution. It's not really a big picture solution, but there are a couple of rooms that have been really persistently problematic. We're gonna have our engineers look at why that is happening. I suspect there's something about when we installed the univents and the piping system that it wasn't calibrated right, something wasn't designed right. So we're gonna look at that, but in those rooms, because we can't quite get the temperature right, we installed supplementary electric heat. So we just had to do something. It's only a couple, but it is what it is.
All right. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess my ask is we come back with what we might need. If the question I want to make sure we understand is if we do need to keep these viable for another 20 years, I don't think $200,000 a year from the town is going to do it. It may be a big number, and so I'd like to know that number if we can share it with long-range planning.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
I think that seems reasonable to say.
Okay.
Very helpful.
Other questions?
Should I give you a quick summary on Q? or
Yeah.
what-
Anything keeping you nervous?
So
It's 2 months ago.
I'm not nervous about closing the fiscal year. I've given you a list of areas where we've gone over budget in salary lines and non-salary lines. I would just say, in those areas, there are things that we specifically, problems we've solved for or tried to solve for in the FY24 budget, which is opening soon. So some of that is the hiring challenges. We've tried to solve for that through our bargaining and our new contracts with our units, including the instructional aids unit. Tuition, transportation, and fuel, we explicitly budgeted for the new hire costs, so that's solved in FY24. That's good news. There are a couple of areas that I'd say we should watch now that they're occurring in as I close FY23, and so I will be watching the budget closely as I'm monitoring in FY24 to see if this occurs again. So these are areas of overages. It's not keeping me up at night for closing FY23. It's more of something to start watching in FY24 and then to budget for in FY25 if needed. So that would be my really succinct version of the Q report.
One of you want to talk about some of the things you've taken on turnover like positions? You mentioned something about to better monitor to get more out of turnover this year. Did you?
Yeah, so, well, that's sort of a technical
Okay.
thing that we've talked about that Lemma has put in place. So we're putting some things in place in terms of our hiring requisitions and sort of utilizing technology better so that we have a better sense of what our turnover number is in real time as we're going through the hiring process. And I think that's going to be really helpful, something other than us on a spreadsheet is needed.
Any further questions?
Oh, I want to give a shout out to the special ed department because they were able to get a circuit breaker extraordinary relief funding, which was a huge win. So that's $125,000.
Oh, they got that.
Yeah, we got it. So I remember in mid-year, we had sent an email off to DESE saying we want to apply, and they told us we're not interested in hearing from you. It is way too early. Come back
Yeah.
later. So we later came back and applied, and that was credit to Abby and her staff, and they filled out the request, and we were funded, and other districts didn't get that funding, so it was great.
Excellent, thank
So
you.
that will help close the fiscal year.
That's great.
But we do have sufficient funds, and you'll be voting on the transfer for the special ed reserve, which will move funds from the town side to the school side so that I can close this fiscal year, because we are over budget, but we anticipated this, and so we have the funds in that account. We also have funds in the IDA grant, and potentially, if need be, we have funds in other revolving accounts that we could use to meet that last dollar to close the fiscal year.
I know we were worried we would have to draw down on the special education reserve because of all of the costs.
Yeah.
Where do you think we're gonna land on the reserve? Are we gonna be low compared to where we were, or are we gonna?
I think we will start the fiscal year FY24 with about 500 in the special ed reserve left
Okay.
after we make this
Okay.
transfer. So that's good. So
Right, so we had a little bit over $1 million,
yes.
right,
so,
in it to start the year.
We got 100,000 transferred to town meetings. I think we're at 1.2.
We're at 1.2. We're gonna request 600 now, and we will have So we will just have the other 600 left.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I
Okay.
said 500, we're counting. I wasn't counting that new 100.
The 100 from town meeting.
Town meeting. Yeah.
Okay, great, all right.
So we'll be in good shape.
It's not too bad.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lemma.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to action items. The first action item is the annual vote regarding participation in school choice, which we've talked about.
Talked about, it does have to be a resolution where you state your reasons, so I provided what we did last year.
I think Dory might be willing to.
This is long.
It is long.
So get comfortable. Okay, whereas the Educational Reform Act of 1993 requires that the enrollment of non-resident students under the school choice provision, unless the school committee votes by June 1st not to participate, and whereas the school choice provision reallocates funds from the sending district and awards such funds to the receiving district, and whereas the maximum reimbursement allowed by the school choice provision is less than Westwood's per pupil expenditure, which means Westwood Public Schools would be required to subsidize each choice student, and whereas once Westwood accepts a choice student, Westwood must keep such student through graduation regardless of whether Westwood's demographic situation has changed, and whereas it is likely that a number of students will return to their sending districts or otherwise leave Westwood, thus creating a potential income loss, now hereby be it resolved that the Westwood School Committee respectfully declines to participate in the school choice program, provided, however, that if surrounding school districts subsequently and prior to June 1 decide to accept the provisions of school choice, the Westwood School Committee reserves the right to do likewise in order to protect its fiduciary interests in this matter.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I think I have to do a roll call here. Dory.
Yay.
Johanna.
Yay.
Maya.
Yep.
Amanda.
Yes.
And Tony is yes. Great, thank you. Thank you for reading that, Dory.
Mm-hmm.
Next is action as a vote to establish Pine Hill Elementary District.
Great, yes, so I provided you with the memo, as you know, back when we talked about consolidation, we had a big redistricting study done. And so the plan is to create the Pine Hill District by simply combining the current Deerfield and the current Hanlon. So that's fairly simple. The one thing for your consideration is that a number of years ago, the school committee designated University Avenue as a swing district, basically. And so at this point, we have students who live on University Ave who are assigned to Downey, Hanlon, and Deerfield. We've been really using this as a strategy to sort of manage class sizes and keep class sizes even. Anticipating that this new building would be opening next year, we really haven't been placing new students at Downey. We've been putting them into Hanlon and Deerfield. The one issue is that we have traditionally kept siblings together. So there have been a couple of students recently who have been assigned to Downey because they had older siblings at Downey, and we're keeping the families together. And so I think that's the one question. You know, I would suggest that at this point you consider assigning students at University Ave to Pine Hill when Pine Hill opens. And then I think the question is just, clearly there are kids at Downey who, you know, I think would be obligated to, well, not obligated, but I think it'd be nice if we left them at Downey. I do think that the question is whether or not to continue to place siblings there. So, you know, there are some students who are currently at Downey who have siblings who are quite a bit younger. And the issue really is about transportation and whether or not we want to continue to provide buses to multiple places from University Ave and for how long. So if you were to take a phased approach, for example, if you said, okay, siblings who are entering kindergarten would still be assigned to Downey next year, it would take 6 years to phase that out. See what I mean?
How many students, I mean, I know you can't necessarily predict.
It's single digits, but, and actually there's a few of the students who are currently down in grade 5, so they're graduating out. Mm-hmm. So we're really talking about a handful of students and then potentially their siblings. I think another option, of course, is to offer families the option of going to Pine Hill as well. Yes, right. So I mean, that's another possibility.
You mean like if you're third grade, you could go there? Well.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're in third, you know, we could say, would you like to start going to Pine Hill in some other year, and have your sibling join you there?
And do you by law, let's say you had 2 trailers, do you by law have to provide transportation to the students? Let's say you had a.
We have to provide transportation if they're within the, yeah. I mean, University Ave's got to be outside the zone. Yes. So yes.
You'd have to provide it to Downey. That's what you
Yes.
said. Yes. Okay.
So the question is, do we say the sibling has to go to Pine Hill, or we're willing to keep that sibling at Downey if you, the parent, provides transportation?
That's what I was thinking.
Right?
Mm-hmm. We could do that. I mean, I think that would be possible under the intra-district policy, right? So in other words, we could say this is a Pine Hill zone.
Right.
If you'd like to request an intra-district transfer, and under that policy, people do provide their own transportation. Yep.
And that would that also give us the leeway to potentially decline the request if it's going to tip class sizes? Like if we do it under that inter-district policy, is it case by case?
It is case by case, and it specifies sort of the guidelines for that decision, and one is within class size guidelines.
Smart too.
Yeah. Yep, so that's a good idea. Do that.
So this affects potentially 5 families. This looks like there's 5 students.
Yes, currently. Other than the ones in 5th grade.
Right, who are, right.
Are we ready to vote on this? Do people want to think about this one? 'Cause there's a little bit, yeah, I think this
Yeah,
one,
there's
this
some
one, I may want to
nuance.
suggest
So-
table, because
Yeah,
there's,
and do we need to, I mean, is this premature to establish the district now?
It certainly doesn't have to happen now. I think that we brought it forward because we got feedback, people were asking questions about this.
And these remaining 5 students, they're all in different families? There's no siblings?
I don't have that information in my head, I don't know. Have to look.
so I would suggest we do another, maybe bring it back
Table it?
and, yeah, table for now, and maybe give people, data and think about it and talk about it, vote on it.
I can
Jim.
find that out, I could
Yeah.
also get you the inter-district policy too, so you can take a look at it, and, yeah. Okay, great.
All right, next is, do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from April 5th, 2023?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All right, great. Next is vote to approve non-bargaining wage increases.
This is something you do annually,
Okay.
and so Lemma has provided a
Yeah.
one-pager for you.
All right, do you have any questions on that? All right, do I have a motion to approve the non-bargaining wage increases?
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. All right, approval to transfer the special education reserve account.
Yes, so this is what Lemma was referring to before. So we have to transfer the funds. And I believe Select Board also has to take a vote. So it's your vote and the Select Board's vote to make this
Okay.
transfer.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the transfer of the special education reserve account? Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. All right, next is ratification of the administrative assistant's side letter.
So I put a little memo in your packet just to say what is happening here. So Allison's been working with the administrative assistants on this side letter regarding mentoring stipends, and we're seeing some turnover in administrative assistants, and we think we need a more consistent, robust way of onboarding new people. We have similar provisions in other contracts, so it would provide a small stipend for admin assistants to serve as an official mentor to a new employee.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to ratify the administrative assistant's side letter?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Finally, a vote to approve out-of-state travel for J-term.
Yes, so you have a memo in your packet. There are really 3 different J-term courses that are proposing out-of-state field trips as part of J-term. And so we need your approval for out-of-state travel.
Do I have a vote to approve the out-of-state travel for J-term?
So moved.
Second? All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right, any other new business from anyone on the committee? All right, great. All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys.
Great, thanks, Tony.